be speaking on the step-by-step scheduled desludging process. We have three speakers in line today. We have Mr. Kalyan Rath, who is a civil servant from Odisha Administrative Services and is currently serving as additional secretary to the government and additional mission director to SBM at the Housing and Urban Development Department of Odisha government. And we have Dr. Pratibha Ganeshan, who is an assistant professor here at ASCII. And she has also worked at, she is with a PhD degree from Center for Studies in Science Policy at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She has more than 8 years of experience in research, consultancy, teaching in the sectors of sanitation, solid waste management, and social determinants of health. Prior to that, she has worked with Tata Institute of Social Sciences. She has worked with Public Health Foundation of India and has extensively researched on urban environment and health issues.
Wow. Can
you mute yourself? And then we have Mr. Asim Mansouri, who is a senior program lead from Center for Water and Sanitation at CEPT University, with a civil engineering degree and a master's in planning and infrastructure. He has been associated with CEPT University since 2010. To moderate this session, we have Professor Chari. I hand over now the dais to Professor Chari to set the context and take over the conversation, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I won't be moderating per se, but just thought I thank Mr. Kalyan Rath, Pratibha, of course, and Mr. Asim for taking out your time on a second Saturday and agreeing to join. Thank you, friends. We had, it's important to understand the whole process that we are going through. Yesterday, we had very interesting conversations about the containment, the waste containment. And we had two interesting aspects that we covered. One is new technologies, new ways of containing the waste so that we avoid transportation, go off grid, like the way we went washing machine or going grid. That solutions are emerging. 1-2 years from now, we would have complete off-grid solutions emerging. So we had some discussions around. Josa, can you hear me? My internet is somewhat unstable, but can you hear me?
We can hear you now. In
between there
is a crack, but right now it's fine.
Yeah. Yes. So then we also discussed about the standards for ensuring that we get quality containment system. Now, this quality containment could be through better designs of septic tanks, better designs of new technologies that we discussed, Jocasso systems and such things. So that's another area we covered. What we couldn't cover yesterday because of the power supply outage and others is a Indian standard IS 2470, which is about how to design a good septic tanks, which Dr. Rohit Kakkar and others will speak about it later. So yesterday, what we covered is primarily on the containment system, how to get safe containment. Today, the conversation is about safe evacuation of the waste and safe transportation of the waste. So today, the conversations, today, the talks are about how do we, evacuate this waste systematically, so that the safety of individual community, safety of the worker is also assured. And then it is safely transported to a treatment facility that we will cover later in the subsequent conversations. So today the conversation will be started by Mr. Rath, as introduced by Dr. Ashri, primarily speaking about a very unique model, a very successful model, not as a pilot, but as a statewide rollout of safe evacuation of the waste by giving special attention to the safety of workers, followed by Dr. Pratibha speaking about Hyderabad experience. Following that, now the safe evacuation should be done as per the standards. It should be done periodically. That is once in 3 years, once in 2 years, like in Nepal, like in Bangladesh, like in India, like most of the countries. It is typically should be evacuated once in 2 years, once in 3 years based on the legal context. There's a technical reason for it. Now, that is called scheduled desludging. It has to be scheduled. Like garbage is scheduled to be collected on a day-to-day basis in our house. The septage has to be collected in a scheduled way once in 3 years or once in 2 years based on the legal requirement. Now, this is a very unique model that Asim is going to present from a city called Vai, from a town called Vai and Sinna, how they have introduced scheduled, how the city government is actually scheduling this whole process of evacuation of this waste. So that's the context within which today we will have our presentations. And I thank all the speakers for taking out your time. Without taking too much of time, now I request Mr. Rath to start with the Orissa best practice in managing this schedule, managing this waste management, septage management with a special attention to worker safety, welfare and well-being. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Chari. And I also thank all the participants. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is with relation to the scheme Garima launched by the state of Odisha on 11 September 2020. Whenever we speak about FSSM, fecal sludge and septage management, we actually miss the persons behind them. So can my PPT be run through? Yes, thank you. When we are talking about fecal sludge and septage management, the persons behind them are the sanitation workers. Here we have identified, next slide. Here we have identified the particular persons who are involved with the fecal matters, and we call them core sanitation workers. And while addressing the issues, we have two important words. One is the safety and another is dignity, which are lacking presently. So safety and dignity, in order to be bestowed upon these sanitation workers, we have classified them as core sanitation workers, those who are dealing with the fecal matters. Next. So this is the particular scheme wherein these two categories, grade 1 and grade 2 of core sanitation workers, mostly who are dealing with operation and maintenance of sewer network, desludging of septic tank or cleaning of septic tank, and category 2 is public community toilet cleaning, SCTP maintenance, etc., and also drain desilting. The persons who are associated with these particular works are being called as core sanitation workers, and the scheme Garima identifies their safety and dignity. Next. The safety aspect is most important because, as we know, the Act PMSR Act 2013 and also various pronouncements of Honorable Supreme Court and our Honorable High Court, that we are, and also being guided by the Constitution of India, right to life. So no one is at liberty to put these persons into a difficult situation. In terms of statutory words, it is called hazardous cleaning. Hazardous cleaning means without any safety devices, without protection of the persons who are associated, who are required to clean the sewer network or the septic tanks. These are called hazardous cleaning. So in order to avoid that and also simultaneously provide them safety, security, all the arrangements has been made. And as we know, the ERSU, Emergency Response Sanitation Unit, are being set up, headed by the Responsible Sanitation Authority, RSA, and a hierarchy below that who will be responsible for this arrangement, and this has been provided by the PMSR Act 2013. Next. As we know very well that unless we provide them a particular setup of training, and that comes where That comes from the statutory process, and the scheme has been launched, and a detailed protocol SOP has also been issued, notified in the Gazette, and a particular training institute, Odisha Water Academy, is there to assist a master trainers who will be providing intern training to all the trainees, physical as well as theoretical as well as practical, so that all the persons whom we call sewer entry professionals. So core sanitation workers are the workers. After training, they are named as sewer entry professionals, and they are able to, or they are capable to handle the situation which are envisaged by them to be handled with. Next. So they are the people with the kit, and what we have a vision for them: regulating and institutionalizing the core sanitation services. Then creation of skilled sanitation workforce. We have a workforce, but it has to be skilled. Then provision of service level benefits. What are the benefits which will be accruing out of this? Then provision of social security benefits, because we are not targeting our core sanitation workers, not only covering them, but also covering their family members within the purview of, within the umbrella of Garima. That is the sanctity of the scheme. Next. So for implementation of all these activities, we have a state level steering committee, then state implementation and review committee, and at the district level coordination committee, and then at the ULB level committee. Next. So these are the social benefits. As Professor Cherry has told that how we have ensured the social benefits. First of all, we have enumerated them. Unless you enumerate them with the proper help of a software, properly publicizing what we intend by enumerating and how do we enumerate. Thereafter, the enumerated list has been published, a draft publication, inviting objections, suggestions if any. Thereafter, it has been made final, and then they have been issued with ID cards and enrolled as core sanitation workers. And anyone who has been enrolled as core sanitation worker has a right or a privilege to get the social benefits like the Pakka House, livelihood supports of family, life insurance, health insurance, mobile phone, education, all those things which has been provided under the scheme Garima. And for this purpose, the state government has provided a corpus fund with 50 crore of initial funding. All these activities will be out of that corpus fund. And that corpus fund has been established with a particular nomenclature, budgetary head, sub head, minor head, and thereafter an accounting procedure duly approved by the accountant general, and thereafter the finance department has prescribed further details, so that the entire process will be transparent and also with due approval and due economy, and also to the fastest possible means we can bestow our benefits to our core sanitation workers as envisaged under this scheme. Next. This is insert the enumeration process. As we have 5 municipal corporations and 1 big municipality covered under Amrut Town, Puri, and till now we have covered 5018 core sanitation workers, and in other ULBs that process is going on. Next. These are the survey process flow, as we have already discussed how we started the process, how others have been trained, how a software has been used, identified, locally published, huge hoardings, wall paintings made to cause awareness among the people who are actually involved in the process to avoid any fake entrants. So this process will be a transparent one. Next. These are some of the questions which has been put to them and their answers recorded there for verification, and it has again been vetted. Next. This is the process after post survey. It has been published. It has been validated by the ULB. IEC activity is taken up. field-based validation made, and final list has been published so that everybody knows who have been enumerated, and if inadvertently someone has been left out, they have a right to appeal or being enumerated in the process. It is an ever ongoing process. We can, just like a voter list, we can update at any point of time for bona fide cases. Next. These are a few things which we have done till now for ensuring that the core sanitation workers are safe at their work. So earlier it was not categorized under the Minimum Wages Act. Now it has been categorized as skilled one. For the grade 1 categories, it is highly skilled, who are associated with operation and maintenance of sewer network and septic tank cleaning. And the skilled grade 2 is the cleaning of public toilet, community toilet, operation and maintenance of the fecal sludge treatment plant, and drain cleaning. Actually, in Odisha, we have adopted a process that is setting up of fecal sludge treatment plants instead of sewer networks, which is a cumbersome process. But in FSTPs, it is low cost, low technology model, which can be managed by the self-help groups, transgenders. So this system has been adopted, and for operation and maintenance, all those Mission Shakti group members have been added. They have been categorized under skilled grade 2. So this has been enumerated under the Minimum Wages Act. So Act has been amended and published in the Gazette of Odisha, and these two categories of core sanitation workers have been included under skilled category. What benefit it accrues? Higher minimum wages. These two categories yield them. Earlier their on-skill wages was 326 rupees per day. Now for grade 1 category, it is 476 rupees per day. And for the grade 2 category, it is 416. So that is the advantage for them. Then taking into consideration their hardship, the arduous nature of work they perform. So government have decided to give an additional 15% of their wages as risk and hardship allowance. So when they are performing, they are also sanctioned with this risk and hardship allowance for the highly skilled category of core sanitation workers. So this is over and above their daily wages. And the next one is that because they are performing a difficult task, their working hours has been reduced from 8 hours to 6 hours. So after performing a job of 6 hours, they can have their daily wages. And if they are under the grade 1 category, they are also earning another 15% of their daily wages as wages in shape of risk and hardship allowance. Next. This is the part which Professor Chari was referring to, that how we can train them up, because just simply providing them a benefit, social benefit covering under social inclusion, we cannot make their skill improve. So this is the way where actually they are traditionally performing this. They have expertise, they have knowledge, they have experience, but we have to instill skill in them, how to do the job professionally, safely. So this is the arrangement that in our Odisha Water Academy, we give them training. So as I have told earlier, that ERSU has been set up in each urban local body. We have two different arrangements. In cases where the PHU, Public Health Engineering Organization, are there, we have the engineering personnel as the responsible sanitation authority. In all other cases, the chief of the urban local body is the responsible sanitation authority. What they do? They ensure that no one is permitted to enter into sewer network or a septic tank without their written permission. So first of all, the duty supervisor has to, upon receipt of a call or a request for dislodging, he has to move to the field, ensure that that can be done through a machine or the cesspool vehicle, or there is no need to enter into the sewer network or the septic tank. That has to be reported in the initial stage. If at all, for any reason, he feels that it is absolutely essential to enter into the network or enter into the septic tank, thereafter he reports in writing in a specified format to the responsible sanitation authority that this is the reason as to why a person has to enter into the septic tank or sewer network. Ordinarily, there no question of entering into it, because now we have transformed ourselves from manhole to machine hole. Now we are using machines. So if for any reason to be recorded in writing, there is absolutely essential that someone has to enter, then that report comes in writing. And after that, the RSA gives written permission, and the core sanitation worker is also aware that yes, I have received the written permission, being a sewer entry professional, or after I have been trained, I know what has to be done and I feel well. That means I am physically fit to enter into to perform my job. And simultaneously, at the outside, there will be ambulance, there will be physicians, there will be police personnel, and a set of persons will be there for any to meet any type emergency type of situation. So that is the arrangement. If anyone is at all required to enter into the septic tank or the sewer network, because and we also take up IAC activities for this, because someone may think that if my septic tank is my personal one, so I have the right to allow anyone to enter into it. No, he cannot. His septic tank may be his personal, but the life of the core sanitation worker is not his personal. He has no right over the life of the core sanitation worker. So the safety and security of the core sanitation worker has to be guided as provided in the Act. So no one can employ, and the penalty, all those things have been widely disseminated so that people will not force or not employ anybody for dislodging activities on their own choice. So these are the setup ERSU, RSA, and these have been trained in the Odisha Water Academy to each of the core sanitation worker. They are certified, they are issued with certificates, and thereafter they are called the sewer entry professionals, and they only perform this job. So this ensures the safety of core sanitation workers. Next. These are the various vivid training to the master trainers, who in turn give training to the core sanitation workers and train them not only about their eligibility, their situation under which they have to work, and what we expect from them, what are their rights, what are their duties, responsibilities, etc. And also with various apparatus, equipment that they are required to handle, and what are the do's and don'ts, which are the most essential parts for safety, because we can provide them dignity, but without safety, dignity has no meaning. Therefore, the safety and dignity go side by side. Next. So these are the equipment which they handle, how they put their services in the field, put their knowledge into practical experience, and how they take up the dislodging activity, the cleaning of the sewer network, using these machines. All these are in the field, and some of the geotag photos are there. They are monitored that actually in reality they are being performing in the field, but in the manner which we have taught them. Next. So these are some of the equipment which are being safety devices used by them. Next. So these are the PPE. This is the most important part. The personal protective equipment we have designed, and for this one we have toiled hard. We have convened many seminars, many VCs. We have discussed with many experts, and the National Institute of Design, all have been consulted, and after that the material, the type, all those things have been finalized, the logo of Garima, and after that we have finalized this PP. And WATCO, the Water Corporation of Odisha, that is the prime institution having the largest network in our state, covered by their institution, and they have procured this material, they have prepared the PP and supplied to the workers. Next. So this what I have earlier told, that the RSA, the 14420 helpline, and the ERSU, Emergency Response Sanitation Unit, and the right side is the table which has been widely disseminated, that if you are violating or engaging anybody in hazardous cleaning, these are the penalties you have to face, the fine and imprisonment, either or both. Next. So these are in brief the standardization of procedures through ERSU, which I have already described, that a call is received, then that received call is recorded, and the duty supervisor determines whether it has to be done mechanically or manually. If mechanically, then the successful vehicle is sent. If manually, then he conducts a assessment, hazardous assessment. Thereafter, he submits his report. Then the RSA verifies, and all those certificates, all the documentary works are over, and then the person is put into the work along with a set of other officials who will be there for rescue operations if required. Then the duty supervisors provides work completion certificate that this work has been completed successfully and there is no pendency and the worker has left successfully or safely. Next. Next, please. All these formats and the procedure has been prescribed in shape of one notification, and it has been communicated to all the PSSO, the private sanitation service organizations, which have been registered with the urban local body or the water corporation or the OWSSB, as the case may be. And the printed formats are also uniform. We have prescribed the same so that there is uniformity across the state. Next. Yes, this is one of the important aspects of Garima scheme. We have established Garima Hall. This is a place where prior to going to their job, the core sanitation workers come here, put their ordinary clothes here in the locker and wear their PPE and move to the workplace. And also similarly, after returning from their work, they clean themselves here. They again give their own dresses and PPEs are kept in the locker safely. And you will be happy to listen that these halls are air conditioned. As we are using, they are also given facility and opportunity, the sanctity of providing them with an air conditioner halls where they will rest. And around 34 such halls are available as on date in the state of Odisha, where we have shared networks, where we have FSTPs operated, and they have individual lockers, bathrooms, to their toilets, and all the refreshment rooms and health checkup facilities. All those are available, and these are the Garima Grihas, and this entire expenditure is borne out of the corpus fund made for the Garima scheme. Next. So this you can see Mr. Babuli Naik prior to this Garima scheme, when he was just wearing an ordinary dress and with the mechanical or the traditional things, and now on the right side the same person with the intervention, with PP, with mechanization, all those things just mark the difference between the same person but with a larger stature. Next. So this gives a picture of a set of core sanitation workers whose smile on the face itself describes how they are safe, how they have been provided with dignity with this scheme, and why how the technical arrangement which has been prescribed and the sole objective of the PMSR Act 2013, that these are the particular ways in which they have to be protected, and all their safety, security has to be ensured, are being ensured under this scheme. And now it has been made applicable to 115 urban local bodies. And we are now also in the process of developing one software, and the software has already been developed. There is a trial run that the amount which we have prescribed, that is the enhanced amount, really goes to them. How we can ensure them? So there is the provision that all the PSSO will be paying their entitled amount through a payment gateway to the core sanitation workers, so that at our end, centrally, we can monitor, we can have a database, we can have reports generated from the software that the enhanced amount, the skill wages, the hardship and risk allowance of 15%, and all those things are paid them regularly, and the same amount are paid, and there is no payment below that amount, that entitled amount. That will be captured by the payment gateway structure, and we can actually ensure that what we have envisaged, what we have notified, actually going to their account, and there is no mismatch or there is no underpayment to our core sanitation workers. So by introducing the scheme and by enforcing all the safety security measures, we have ensured their safety, and there is awareness amongst people that if you are engaging anyone in hazardous cleaning, you will be penalized. So better, or it is mandatory under the provisions, that you will give a call to the urban local body through 14420, and the entire process will be followed. Dislodging will be there, or any complaint is there, that is to be addressed, and by that the solution comes to the people that they are having their services at appropriate time in the appropriate manner. Simultaneously, the safety and dignity of the core sanitation workers who are being associated in the process are exactly saved, and what we intend under this scheme are exactly protected, and they are actually given the safety and security standards along with dignity, what is objective of this scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Josna, would you like to pull it out? Yeah. Thank you very much. There are quite a few interesting questions. Rasab, I think it's a very fascinating, very unique, initiative. I would say it's a global benchmark. Thank you very much for sharing. So, Mr. Gupta, would you like to ask your question? So what Mr. Gupta is trying to ask, I think, which is applicable for everybody, is that the definition of core sanitation workers, in many parts of the country, the sanitation workers, most of them, particularly the desludging operators, are in the private sector. Some of them are contracted by the municipality for drain cleaning, for public toilet maintenance, but many of them are in the private sector. It's completely a private arrangement. Now they have been licensed. So in the context of Orissa, I know there may not be many private desludging operators, but what is your definition, sir? There are some outliers like private desludgers which are not really contracted by the municipality.
Yes, that is the core issue, because when we are saying that someone is a sanitation worker, in our mind we have many pictures: someone sweeping, someone taking some vehicles, tricycles, etc. In our mind, it comes as a sanitation worker. But we have divided this into two parts. Sanitation workers handling fecal matters in 5 categories. That is, first, sewer entry professionals. Second, septic tank cleaning. Third is the category of cleaning of community toilet, public toilet, and desilting of the drains. So the persons associated with these 5 category of works are being called as core sanitation workers. So a person doing the simple street sweeping is not a core sanitation worker. First. Second is that whether that person in the official employment list of the urban local body or the state government, and whether he or she is not there and he or she is in a private sector, in both the categories, they are called core sanitation workers. So it is the person, even if he is in a private institution under the private sanitation service organization, or he is enrolled under the urban local body, he is an employee of the urban local body. In either the cases, he is a core sanitation workers under the scheme Garima. So he or she is entitled to all the benefits, even if he is in a private sector or he is in a government sector. But he has to be enumerated. His name should be there under the list of Garima core sanitation workers. He must have been provided with ID so that he or she is given the benefit as envisaged under the scheme. If someone has been left out, it is open for that person to being enrolled by the competent authority under the scheme Garima and get the ID. So all the benefits can be accrued to them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. So there's one more related question. If somebody is from the private sector and you have minimum wages defined, but the private sector has its own market forces for payment of wages. So how is the government actually enforcing minimum wages as defined for the grade 1, grade 2 when somebody is actually in the private sector? Are there any mechanisms, or is it through communication that you are you're communicating these minimum wages?
Yes, currently through IEC activities we are doing this, but we are to enforce this once this employees management software is in force, which has actually been completed. We have made some trial run, which I was speaking of the payment gateway. So all the private sanitation service organizations are required to make payment to the core sanitation workers through this payment gateway. So they will be making payment through this payment gateway so that we can have at a glance picture that X, Y, or Z sanitation organization are making payment to the core sanitation workers not below the amount entitled by them. So we can ensure that vividly.
Fantastic. So Sudhaji asked one question. Sudhaji, would you like to ask or just from the time management perspective, I will take the liberty. Are these core sanitation workers federated by any way so that they would have a collective voice? They can actually negotiate. They can do a better benchmarking in terms of wages, exchange ideas. Are they federated, or right now it is too early?
No, we have already looked at that. Under NULM, guideline has been prescribed by Government of India. Adopting that guideline, we have issued another revised SOP to our urban local bodies, and they have formed groups of our transgender members are associated. They have formed group, and some other members have also formed, because in mostly they are male members. Ordinarily, what we have women members associating themselves with the self-help groups. So here we have male members forming self-help groups. So it has already been envisaged, and these groups have already been formed, and they are also being given financial assistance to procure the equipment if they need, and also along with the free PP being supplied either by government or through the PSSO, but they have to receive the PP and equipment which they need so that they can professionally do their job with our national Safai Karamacharis fund, etc. are also there, and we are also providing our corpus fund so that there is no dearth of financial resources, and groups are being formed, for which we have also one PMU set up at the state level, who is also monitoring and facilitating this process.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, our friend from Africa, Mr. Dongo, asked, what are the challenges that you are experiencing in implementing this?
Yes, there are many challenges. Nice question, because this is a traditionally established system which we have to fight against, and we have to take them to a higher elevation gradually, slowly, because all of a sudden we can't do this. So we have to enumerate the persons who are there, because they don't come to us, because they don't know anything that these are the scheme available, these are the benefits available. So they don't know anything. So we have to identify them. We have to bring them into this fold. So that was the most important challenge when we started enumeration. So they don't come forward. They were apprehending that I may be put to some danger, so I should not disclose anything of my responsibilities, my name, address, etc. So gradually we have their confidence, and we introduce them that this is the scheme, this has been launched by government, so you will be benefited if we come under this purview. So gradually this faith building procedure was established, and their community is a scattered one. They live in different patches. So we have to reach each and every colony through the help of the local people, because they trust the local people. So the local people, they enumerated them with, because our questionnaire was a long one, to have their history, who are there in their family, and because we aimed at that, their family members are also to be simultaneously taken care of. So we took the entire detail of the family and who are there, how they have been facing difficulties. So all have been enumerated. So that was the most challenging one.
Yeah. So I think enumeration itself is a starting point where challenge, it's not easy at all for a statewide approach. You have reached already 8,500
Yes.
enumeration numbers. So last point, there are quite a few questions. Razab, if it is okay with you, you can, in the chat box, if you could respond, we will greatly appreciate. One question, is it applicable also for rural India? Mr. Pandey is asking, is it applicable for rural areas of Orissa, or it's right now urban?
Right now it is limited to urban area because we are dealing with the urban sector, but we have a rural urban convergence. So that has also come up. So within a radius of 20 kilometers from the urban local areas boundary, we are providing this facility, and whoever are there performing this job, they are also enumerated. So it has not become the universal one. It is specifically urban one with a flexibility of 20-kilometer radius. Rural urban convergence is there. So if it is taken for all the rural area, then it will become 100% throughout the state.
So my one more question, sorry. So
Yeah,
all those FSTPs which are working on this rural urban convergence model, in few of them, SHGs are taking the maintenance and operation of those FSTPs, SHGs.
Yes.
So are they also being benefited with this scheme?
Yes, because you have seen that in the grade 2 category, the FSTP operation and maintenance of FSTP are also covered under the grade 2 skill category. Our FSTPs are very low cost and low technology things. That is entirely gravity based. There is no very big technical know-how. So these FSTP are being managed by either transgender groups or self-help groups who have also been trained. And along with them, there is one technical resource person who takes the lead. So they are managing this, and they are also covered under the grade 2 category of the skilled workers.
Okay. So, Mr. Pandey Sahab, we will share with you the PPT. There is a different wage for grade 1, grade 2, and they have been defined what is grade 1, grade 2. I think you would get complete details from that particular deck. Mr. Gupta, over to you. Your hand is up. Last question.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Chari. And Mr. Rudd, I just want to ask, what is the main reason for your office to initiate the program, other than the dignity reason? And secondly, I'm interested to know how you convince legislatives to support your program. I'm sure there will be budgetary involvement or that you have to prepare. And how do you convince them to support this Garima program? Thank you very much.
Yes, this Garima scheme was envisaged when we made a presentation before our Honorable Chief Minister that this is the current status. We have to provide these facilities to our core sanitation workers. So we come up first with a PPT before our Honorable Chief Minister, and within a few minutes he approved that in principle. So again, we are then our task was to frame the SOP. So it took around 15 days time to prepare the SOP at length. Who are the core sanitation workers? What are the definition? What are their job responsibility? How URSU has to be set up? Who will be the RSA? All those details have been framed, and they have again been approved by Honorable Chief Minister. And then came notification. It was also notified, and again the Minimum Wages Act was to be amended, and all those amendments as a corollary were taken up. Then came regarding budget. So again, we moved to finance department that this is the things, and we have an committee, EFC committee. That committee, we explained in detail before the finance department committee that these are the provisions we are making for the core sanitation workers. These are the social benefits, and these are the traditional stigma associated with this structure. So we have to remove all those stigma. We have to take them to higher elevation. So instantly the finance department agreed. So the process followed for creation of a separate budgetary head, subhead, and that has again to be approved by the accountant general, and it was approved. Then an accounting procedure has to be framed. Again, we framed the accounting procedure, how to incur expenditure from the corpus fund. Then it was also approved and notified. So there is a budgetary head, there is a specific corpus fund. The advantage of corpus fund is that in each year you need not place for budgetary allocations. There will be no shortage of money. Once this corpus fund is there, 50 crore, if we are exhausting the amount, then we'll go for further requirement. Otherwise, it will be available with us throughout the year without any movement to any department for additional resources. We'll be having this in initial 50 crores. When we are approaching or exhausting, then we will go for further allocations. So this is the benefit for having a corpus fund. and the entire procedure has been approved by the Accountant General, the Finance Department. So we are incurring expenditure from these sources. So the end framework has been established with due approval of government and the Honorable Chief Minister of Odisha with a very few days only.
So, Mr. Gupta, and for all of us, I think the message is that a strong political will is important. But I think no politician would object to such a beautiful scheme. I think we need a administration with heart to anchor this scheme. That is equally important. It's not just the political will. Politicians are generally, they understand the relevance of such schemes. Of course, Orissa is blessed with a very powerful political will, but there's also very noble administration with heart for such interventions. So I think it requires a combination of both. So thank you, Mr. Rath. And there are quite a few questions, Mr. Rath. If you can spare a bit of time and respond to some of the questions in the chat box, if you're familiar, please do so. Otherwise, we will collect these questions and then we will send it to you. Pratibha, there is a small change in the schedule. Mr. Asim has to go. He has a time check on at 5:30. So I would switch the slot. I would now invite Mr. Asim, who is going to take us through, as I introduced earlier, he's going to take us through a very practical step-by-step approach of why scheduled desludging, what is scheduled desludging, how to implement it, and what are the challenges while implementing scheduled desludging. This has not been done in many places, and it is super important for all of us to understand a very clear, simple way of operationalizing the scheduled desludging. Over to you, Asim. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor Chariji, for adjusting on the time. And sorry, Pratibha, for taking in your slot, but okay. So I'll just share my screen here. Is my screen visible?
It is loading. Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Is a full screen seen, right?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, great. So hello everyone. Today, what we are going to share with you is about this whole idea. I think what Chariji mentioned, that the sanitation workers piece is very important, but the next step is about how do you actually regularly desludge your septic tanks. So how do you periodically or schedule desludge like you have your SWM door-to-door systems? So today we are going to go through a case of one of the cities of Y, where we supported the city government to implement this idea of scheduled desludging, and I go through each step of it. So one step two, that how these steps were taken so that in your work or in your cities where you're working, you can actually implement this schedule program, and what were the learnings and challenges as they come up, I will discuss as the same as well. So just to brief you about the city of Y, because of the context, this city of Y is based out in Maharashtra. You must have all heard about Panchgini and Mahabaleshwar. So this city of Y is at the foothills of Panchgini, just 10 kilometers away, and it is considered as a holy town because it's called the Dakshin Kashi of India, mini Dakshin Kashi it's called, with 250 temples along the Ghats and all, and it's a very famous Bollywood movie shooting location. Many of the Bollywood movies like Dabang or Swadesh or anything that you say which has been shot in rural precincts, it has been shot in Y. Now, why did we pick up this city? That why and why not any other city? Because this city is actually representative of 4,000 plus small and medium towns in India. That's why what we wanted to try out with our partners is that if you're able to replicate something in this size of a city, it has the potential of replication in 4,000 towns of India. So that was our ultimate aim, why this city was chosen, a small town and not a very big town. But because of the replication and scale in terms of numbers, this city was quite important. So like any other city, when we started this work in 2013, any city in India would be at this situation where we all understand the service chain, where the excess, in terms of excess, it has open defecation, high dependency on community toilets. At that time, septic tanks were the collection system in this town. But we were lucky enough to find proper septic tanks, which were 2 to 3 chambered, unlike other states where, or in other parts of Maharashtra, on the eastern side of Maharashtra, where it's difficult to find septic tanks, but there are more pit toilets. But in this city, we have found septic tanks which were 2 to 3 chambered, but largely oversized because of the because people were not aware about the standard sizes of septic tanks and all. The ULB was providing desludging services, and they were only desludging 2 to 4 septic tanks, which was more on a demand base, that my tank is full and I'll call the local government, and local government would provide the service against some charge of 1,000 rupees per trip. At that time, there was no treatment facility and all the septage was being disposed. So here is the actual photo of that site where the septage was being disposed in Y, in an open dump site. So this was a situation when we started, unlike any other city of India. It's not that this was a very one of the case, but any city that you visited at that time in 2013, pre-Swachh Bharat I'm talking about, it would have been a similar situation. Sorry, yeah. So what the city actually did, so I think let's talk in terms of steps. So this was a situation in 2013, and we supported the city to develop a citywide sanitation plan. And they said that let's not only prepare a document which looks very beautiful in a report and in my shelf, let's implement that. So one of the ideas, apart from ODF, the Open Defecation Free program that this city took up before Swachh Bharat, this all is happening before Swachh Bharat mission was launched in India in 2014. So in 2013, they said, let's become ODF. And the other thing that they resolved upon, and I want to highlight that this is a very important step. Sometimes as partners working with city, we sometimes miss this step, that we don't get the city government on board, but start implementing ourselves. But the important step for sustaining the activities beyond SEP or ASCII or IHS support or any other NGO partner support would be that how do you institutionalize this activity within the city government system? So this city in 2014, they actually resolved through an executive order. It's called a council resolution in Maharashtra, but in your cities it may be, or in your places in other countries, it may be called an executive order, where they passed an order that the city resolved that they will do citywide fecal sludge septage management, involve a private sector, do scheduled desludging, which was a very new concept in India at that time. They allocated land and they said that we'll finance it through tax. And I'll come to this point of taxes and why not charge-based system. So because of this resolution that was passed in 2014, let me tell you that even today, in case we want to do anything, this resolution forms the basis of that. So in your work, whenever you start, see to it that this activity is institutionalized. Any activity, schedule or any other activities on sanitation or water that you do, it's institutionalized in your government system through an executive order. So what is this idea of scheduled desludging? It sometimes sounds like a foreign concept, but it is very simple actually. I think Professor Chariji very well explained in the introduction. Like it's like your daily door-to-door collection service for solid waste. Something very similar happens in terms of septic tanks. So what was the present system, and that is being followed here in India as well, that on demand, or any place in the world actually, it's an on-demand service where your septic tank gets full, you call up the private operator or the local government. They will come with their trucks and the households will pay some charge against which the service is provided. This is what we call as a complaint redressal, that you raise a complaint and your complaint is redressed. But the whole concept is that we need to move towards scheduled desludging practice for all the scientific reasons as well, not only because of the other safety and inclusivity aspect, but also from the aspect of technical operations of the septic tank, that for its efficient work. So what happens in the schedule? That all the septic tanks get desludged on a predetermined schedule, like your door-to-door SWM service comes daily to your house. In this case, your septic tank will be desludged once in 3 years. There are regulations and penalties set in place so that this desludging happens. Awareness is very important. This service could be provided by a local government or a private operator, depending on the size of the city and the number of the size of infrastructure that is required. And this could be done through levying of taxes. So if we talk specifically in case of India, few of the states have this provision that in case you provide sanitation as a service, you can levy a sanitation tax. So in that style, this city and the Maharashtra Act had this provision. So we were able to levy sanitation tax instead of charges. And let me tell you, this sanitation tax is a very small amount. It's like an EMI that the households pay, but they actually get a free service and they don't have to pay anything while the desludging service is being provided. So what are the benefits of scheduled desludging? Why do schedule and why not just go with the present system of demand desludging? First and foremost, and the most important, it is that it is equitable and inclusive service. It covers all the septic tanks of the city which have, whether it's a slum or a non-slum property, any property that has a septic tank, residential, non-residential, would be desludged. The pricing that it offers is at much lower. So in demand based, we understand that the truck will be moving in XYZ direction, northeast, west, south, because it's a demand based. But because of scheduled desludging, you know where your septic tanks would be and you follow a route. So you optimize your operations, because of which you can do lesser number of trips, or you know where you need to go, and you can reduce your O&M cost for desludging. So you can offer the services at a much lower price. One of the very important thing is also on behavior change, because when this whole Swachh Bharat mission was launched and when we were working in this town, many households actually said that once we built the toilets, we were not using them because we were scared that the septic tanks would get full and then we have to actually get it desludged and pay higher amounts. So when we told them that your septic tank would be desludged every 3 years and you don't have to worry, it was a behavior change in them, that they started using their toilet and said that not to worry, the local government is going to provide this as a service and we don't have to worry about this tank being over full and all. I think very important thing, and I think even my previous presenter talked about this, that there should be no manual labor. So this scheduled desludging sees to it that only mechanized desludging is used and that nobody is allowed to enter the septic tank. There is infrastructure optimization. I think this is very important because sometimes you end up having too much big fecal sludge treatment plants which actually don't get the load of the septic because of demand desludging. So under this scenario, as you know that you daily need to desludge, let's say 5 or 6 septic tanks. So you know how much volume is going to come, so how much treatment plant capacity you require. So you are able to optimize not only your truck infrastructure, but your treatment infrastructure as well. And last but not the least is very important is the environmental benefits. And we have actually done a research for 3 years around how the septic tank performance has improved, eventually leading to improved ground and river water quality. And it has actually proven that scheduled desludging helps doing this environmental benefits. And we have a paper on this, which we are happy to share with you, and it's now in the public domain as well. So these are the benefits of why we need to do scheduled desludging. So the first step, I think what I mentioned before was the institutionalization. The second thing is how you need to plan scheduled services. So basically in this city of Y, we divided it into 3 zones based on the property tax database and some sanitation database that we were able to create in this cities. That broadly in zone 1, how many? So we had a target of around 4,000 septic tanks in this town. So we were able to actually, based on the administrative words, devise these zones, zone 1, zone 2 and zone 3 of desludging. So basically in year 1, the zone 1 is desludged, year 2, zone 2 is desludged, and year 3, zone 3 is desludged. So the whole city was divided into 3 zones, and based on the number of septic tanks that we need to desludge and the distance to the treatment facility, we decided a number of trucks that need to be deployed to attain the targets of 4,000 septic tanks in 3 years. And the whole route planning was done. So for example, this if you see, this is zone 1. So we have actually detailed out a map of zone 1, that this is how the truck will move. If you can see the arrows moving, it moves through each and every lane of that area, and only it enters from one side and it exits from the other side. So this is the way the whole schedule operations are carried out. So the whole route planning was done in this town, and it's if you sit with the sanitation engineer or the inspector of your city, you can actually devise these route zones very easily. So local context and approval is very important. Getting the whole local government on board for this service is a very important activity. So I think the third step, which would be very important, would be in terms of who will provide this service. A local government can also provide this service. There is no doubt about that, because it's their core responsibility. But it can also be done by a private operator. So this city of Y decided that let's involve private sector. Now, there were two concerns that were raised. So talking about some of the challenges and the ideas that came up. One of the challenges that the local government said that generally our contracts are such that we have to pay to the private operator irrespective of their performance. So it's a lump sum based contract. Okay? Every month I have to pay you whatever, $2,000 or 2 lakh rupees, whatever is the amount, irrespective whether you perform or not. So that was a challenge that was raised by the local government. And on the private sector side, the challenge that they said that, and which is common across the country or maybe the world as well, that we don't get paid on time. Even with submission of proper bills and all, we are not getting paid on time for our services. So to resolve these two challenges, we, along with the local government, we developed a balanced performance-based contract. So what is this performance balanced contract? So to mitigate the risk that the local government said, the contract was devised such that it's a performance-based contract. So here in this case, it was, let's say 4,000 septic tanks in 3 years. So every year, almost, let's say 1,300 septic tanks. So in case the private operator is only able to attain, let's say 40% or the 60% of the target, they only get paid 60% of the for the contract value and not the 100%. And this contract was designed as a per septic tank base and not per trip base also, because sometimes the private operator can fudge around with the number of trips. They can take a half truck and claim for a full trip. So the city said that let's do a per septic tank based contract because it's easy to monitor. To redress the private sector's concern about late payments, this city actually agreed upon doing escrow mechanism, a very novel concept done by the small town. Large cities do this. It's a very standard thing, but the small towns have never tried this out. So they did a tripartite agreement between the local government, the private operator, and the bank, where they said that 3 months of balance payment to the contractor would always be there in this bank account. So in case, for example, I had to pay you $2,000 a month, $6,000 of payment would always be there in this account. So you can't, the local government can never say that there is no funds available. So this is the way the private operators' risk was mitigated about delayed payment. So funds were always available. In this mechanism of contract that was done, the trucks were to be brought by the private operator and the awareness activities also be done. And again, the whole idea of replication, which I talked in the initial, how do you replicate this in 4,000 towns? We followed the whole transparent bidding process of the city government. So all the tenders were floated, technical evaluation done, financial evaluation, and then only the tender came out at the bid, the contractor end. So these steps that we follow, we never tweaked any of the steps. So we feel that this could be replicated, and we were able to create model contracts that are being replicated right now across cities of Maharashtra as we speak right now. So that was on the who provides the service and how you can design a more balanced contract mitigating all the challenges. The fourth important step is about how do you finance this, the whole concept of scheduled days. So we call this the performance linked annuity payment, wherein the scheduled desludging operator enter into the contract with the local government. The capital cost and the O&M cost, so the trucks and the human resource cost, whatever is there, is brought in by the private operator. They provide a service to all the properties in the city once in 3 years based on the schedule and the route planning. The citizens, the properties pay a sanitation tax, which is as a part of the property tax, and to the local government, and the local government transfers these funds into the escrow mechanism that I discussed previously. And then based on the performance, the funds are given to the private operator. Now, so where is performance coming in here right now? So one thing is that based on the targets that they attain, they will be given payment. And the other thing that we saw to it that this desludging operator, if they do not go to the treatment facility, they are not being paid for the septic tank. So that is the way the whole loop was closed, that all the sludge that is collected by this operator from the household goes to the treatment facility. And that was the way the whole financing mechanism and the operation mechanism were designed, that households will pay the tax as a part of their annual property tax system. Now, just to elaborate on this sanitation tax. So what happens that, at least in India, there is an annual property tax system where the cities pay this property tax to the local government. So this city inserted one more item called Swachhta Kar, or sanitation tax as it is called, So this sanitation tax is a very small amount. Previously, the households, if I talk in, because there is global teams also here, previously the households were paying almost $13 for getting their septic tanks desludged. Right now, they're only paying $1 a year. So in 3 years, they pay $3, and your septic tanks gets desludged once in 3 years by the private operator through this local government service. So you see the households are actually finding benefits of the reduced costs and benefits for getting them desludged. And the success for our case is also that people are not being charged at that time, because we learned this from one of the case of Malaysia, where they moved from the tax base to charge base, and they actually saw that people stopped desludging. Because when you go to a household and you ask for money, that you desludge your septic tank and I will charge you at that time, people actually say, no, that my septic tanks are not yet full, why should I desludge? So we try to avoid this step of charging people at the household and levy this as a sanitation tax. So this is a notionally free service for the people, because they don't feel the brunt of paying the operator while this service is being provided. And this was one of the reasons why it succeeded in this city as well. The fifth step is required, is that you need to treat whatever you collect. I think you should not start scheduled desludging if you are not going to treat that, because you are actually transferring the problem from one area, decentralized area, to one centralized area. So these cities, they developed a solar-based FSTP. This was funded by the Gates Foundation. In 2018, it was commissioned, and because of scheduled desludging, they have been able to treat till date around 20 million liters of septage. And this is a solar-based power plant. So this is being right now run totally on solar power, and it is actually generating more solar power. So it's more energy positive plant that the city has been able to set up. And it's reusing the treated wastewater for the urban forest and landscaping around it. Now, in terms of, I think I'm in the PLAM model, which I showed before, it talks about the performance linked payment. So how was this done in the city? So this city, they had these 4 manifest forms, whether there is a local government form, property holder, treatment, and the treatment plan, the desludging operator. So these 4 forms are like a carbon copy of each other. So when the desludging service goes to the household, the property holder signs on this form and says that we have received this service and nobody has entered the septic tank, no manual scavenging was done, and the septic has been desludged from my house. This same form then is given to the property holder. Then as these are all carbon copies, then the Sumit operator, the private operator, signs on this form that they have provided this service to the households, and they take this form to the treatment plant as well, where they sign that they have delivered it to the treatment facility. The treatment operator signs that they have received the septic. So on this form of the treatment plant, they have the signature of the household, the desludging operator, and the treatment plant operator. So we have closed the loop, which says that this all septage collected from this household goes to this treatment facility. And then one copy submitted with all these 3 signatures to the WMC for the billing purpose. So this was the paper-based mechanism that was being followed in this city. But the city said, I think we are all moving towards artificial intelligence and online systems. So city said that why should we do paper-based? Let's move towards more online systems. So we supported the city to develop this app called Sanitab and Sanitrack, which is like an Amazon service delivery. So you all have this Amazon service, right? Where they deliver a product to you, sign on the phone, which claim that you have received the services, acknowledge it, and then the service is being provided. So this 4-page manifest form was actually converted into a digital app, which is being used right now in at least, they were trying to deploy this in 400 cities of Maharashtra, but working in this based on learning of this, where this app is now being used for monitoring scheduled services. And the Sanitab app is being used to generate the database of septic tanks, because nobody actually knows what septic tanks are, what is the size, are they accessible. So we are also able to create a Sanitab, the septic tank database of this town, and we have the dashboards are created which shows which areas have been desludged, what was the target, how much has been desludged till now and all. And this is all now moving towards IT-based system based on monitoring, which is an important learning based on present context that we all need to follow to avoid all the fudging around with the paper-based document and everything. Because also these apps are geo-coded, so they actually, when you sign, they tell the location of your where you are standing right now. And in this, we have also deployed location for the treatment facility. So in case you are not near in the vicinity 100 meters of the FSTP, you are not able to sign on this app. So that way we were able to even close that the septage is not being discharged anywhere in the open and fudging of signatures don't happen. The last step, I think, very important, apart from the service delivery, is about how to get the citizens on board, because this was a very new concept. Nobody knew what scheduled desludging, why we need to desludge and all, and what they need to monitor. So as a part of the contract, the ULB had put this responsibility on the private operator, where they said that the private operator will go to each and every household. They will share this type of leaflets, which says that why you need to desludge septic tanks. And they will also mention, you can see this image, it's in Marathi, but it says that the truck operator will come at the specified time that they have mentioned to you. Nobody should be allowed to enter the septic tanks. You will not be paying any amount to this desludging operator. And this PPEs and all should be worn by the operator. So this type of awareness campaign was done with the households. So when they sign on the Sanitrack app, all these features have to be tick marked by the households, that this all things were not done or done in their operations, and then only it becomes a valid desludging and the payment is made. We followed the WhatsApp media and the social Facebook media and all very closely and posted on that to create awareness around this. So one of the learnings which came from this exercise, if you recollect, I mentioned that 3 zones were designed, right? Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3. And we started with Zone 1. So when we started with the awareness, we started citywide. And unfortunately, the demand started to false demand, not the actual demand, but false demand started to come from Zone 3. That it's a free service. Why should we take it right now only? So then we had to actually decide that let's do zone level awareness campaigns and not go full force on the city level, because it started to create artificial demand for emergency desludging in these areas. But if there was a legitimate emergency desludging, as a part of the contract, the private operator had to provide the desludging service to them as well. So because of all these 7-8 steps that I described before, this city of Y has successfully completed the complete desludging of the whole city. As you can see, all the septic tanks have been mapped, all the properties have been mapped, and they have desludged almost 3,600 septic tanks in 3 years, covering almost 6,800 properties, only through mechanized desludging. No manual scavenging was done, and it was monitored through the Sanitrack app. And the experience of this learning, we were able to scale up through the National Fecal Sludge Septage Management Alliance in India at national level in the ODF++ protocol and the Swachh Bharat, the Swachh Sarvekshan protocol of SBM 2.0. So this is the way we were able to scale up the experience of these few towns in Maharashtra to the national level. Now, after this experience of first year of desludging, the city has already floated a tender, and as we speak right now, the contractor has already been identified for the second round of desludging, and from tomorrow, 6th October, the second round of scheduled desludging would be starting in this city. And one more benefit, I think what I mentioned before, was on the environment. So based on that 3-year research study that we did, we found out that the septic tanks have improved in performance, because of which the BOD, COD, the TSS and nitrogen have actually come down from the septic tanks. And that water that was going into the drains has actually now reduced BOD levels, COD levels, and the quality of ground and river water quality has improved. And we would be again happy to share this study with you as well. So just to summarize, if you remember the first slide, which was more in red color, I'm not going to speak again through all this, but it has now moved towards green, towards safe and inclusive sanitation in 3 years of post 3 years of scheduled desludging. And this is not the only city which has done. We have been able to, through the state government support in other cities of Y, Sinnar, Kolhapur, Satara in Maharashtra, and many other cities in India are now talking about the whole novel concept about scheduled desludging. So to summarize, yeah.
Asim, if you could.
Yeah, this is the last. Yes, yeah, this is the last slide. Yeah. So just to summarize, what are the key factors that will actually help you implement is that think of scheduled desurging as a municipal service, like the SWM service that was being mentioned before. Don't do demand driven, and don't put the onus of desurging on the households. Like you provide your SWM service, provide this desurging service. Higher acceptance rates can be linked to indirect cost recovery through sanitation tax. Don't charge the people for desurging, but try to explore the tax-based model if possible in your cities and towns. And proper monitoring and IEC campaigns is very important. You need to have proper monitoring to see to it that safe services are being provided and safe conveyance and treatment is happening. And again, I think I need to acknowledge that this would not have been possible without the support of our funders, the Gates Foundation and the government of Maharashtra, and the whole scale up through the NFSSM Alliance. I think it has been an astonishing journey for us when we started this work a few years ago, and now the stage at which it has reached. Thank you.
Thank you, Asim. Fantastic presentation and very thought-provoking initiative. So there are quite a few questions, Asim.
Sure.
Just to optimize the time, let me take the opportunity. So there is one question from Mr. Subhash, which is also linked to what Sudhaji has said. You mentioned about $1 per year as a typical benchmark for scheduled desludging. So it means about 70-80 rupees, Indian rupees, and then once in 3 years, it is about 180 rupees. Is that good enough, or is there any subsidy coming from the municipality as part of through the property tax and other taxes? So what is the current rate?
Yes, so very rightly mentioned that this is happening at a subsidized rate right now. So the actual cost to the government is around 800 rupees for a per septic tank, and the households are only paying 200 rupees. So the other 600 rupees is actually coming from the property tax surplus of the municipal accounts from their own funds. And the city said that right now, because when we started this, to have a proper uptake of desludging services, they said that let's charge something less right now and we can fund it from our own pockets because it's a municipal service. Even the solid waste services are subsidized. So why not this service? So that's the way that they decided. Now for the second round, what they're planning to do is to link it to the property tax as a percentage of property tax. So if you have a bigger property, you will pay more tax, and a smaller property. So in that way, let's say, for example, in the previous desludging, only 60% was coming from the municipal funds. Now in next step, in the next year of the next round of desludging, at least 40% only would be coming from the municipal funds. Rest 60% they will try to recover from the households through the sanitation tax and all.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So there's one more related question, not related, but on the ICT monitoring front. Yeah. Typically, what happens is, this is not just about scheduled desludging, but even for solid waste or even property tax. When we start, it's often led by the consultants. Managing this on a day-to-day basis through an IT enablement system by the municipality is pretty challenging.
Yes.
But it takes time. So what has been your journey in the sense, can municipality manage on their own, or will they need a little more time? How does it work?
So in this case of the app operations right now were being managed by our team because it was happening for the first time and we wanted to test the app and all. But the dashboards that were being created out of this app were being monitored by the chief officer and the sanitation inspector of the town. And agree with you, Chariji, that it takes time. It's not an overnight thing that they were able to accept it. We had to sit with them, push them to look at it. But eventually, once they saw the benefit of this monitoring and they were able to monitor the private operator and link it to the payment, actually they came on board to use the dashboards and all. The other city where in Sinnar, the local government has actually deployed a person who operates the app as well. So we have two types of stories, both operated by our team and by the local government. And in the second round of desludging, they have now, as a part of the contract, inserted the clause that this app needs to be operated by the private operator now. So we'll be training the private operator who will then report to the local government on a monthly basis. And the dashboard will still be ULB facing, where they will be able to see what the private sector is reporting. So we are trying to move one step further on that now.
So like many services, whether it is building monitoring services or water management, many a times these are outsourced.
Yes.
As long as the municipality has a control over the
Yes.
performance monitoring, I think it's fair enough.
Yeah.
ULB need not be doing micromanaging.
Micromanagement,
As long
exactly.
as there's
Yeah.
a very clear agreement between the service provider and the private agency. So
Sure.
thank you very much, Asim. There's one more, this question is not directly to you, but I think Tilina is asking, if the septic tank is properly built with a soak away, do you need desludging at all? So I think yes, as per the standards, we do need to do desludging. Septic tank with soak away is actually absorbing the basically the liquid portion of it. The overflow of the septic tank is being absorbed and through soil remediation partly is treated as part of the soak pit. But the solids will get accumulated, it gets digested, but still it requires periodic desludging.
Yes.
So theoretically also, as well as in reality, it requires desludging once in 2 to 3 years as per the standard. Vivekji, over to you. Last question.
Yes, sir. So my question is a bit related to what Ms. Thelina asked. So, sir, since scheduled desludging is being done in the city, so certainly the team would have come across various types of septic tanks, and we know that around 99% of the septic tanks in our country are not technically correct. They don't have baffle walls, they don't have those slopes, gradients and all. So don't you think this scheduled desludging could also be an opportunity to retrofit those wrong septic tanks, which equally pose the challenges and the sanitation related threats?
Yeah, beautiful question, Vivekji. So Asim, is there any way we can retrofit them?
Okay, so we started with that assumption that with scheduled desludging we will be able to retrofit, but let me tell you, it's a private cost. Again, there is a public finance and there is a private finance. If you tell a household that you need to retrofit your septic tank, they will not do that, frankly, because and once you desludge the whole septic tank, there is still nobody is actually willing to enter that tank and actually build baffles and all. We have been lucky enough, as I mentioned in the starting, that we had actually oversized septic tanks, but with proper baffles, 2 to 3. So refurbishment was actually not required in our cases, but I agree with you that we started with that concept that in case we find some septic tanks, can they be retrofitted? And our FGDs with the people said that it's a bit challenging. They don't want to actually invest into that right now. So
Vivek, I think, it is, so it's a very relevant question you asked. I take the opportunity to just respond to this. I take a parallel example of power sector. In buildings are big guzzlers of energy. You know that buildings consume. So to reduce the energy footprint of the buildings because of bad practices in the households, many utilities globally, when I say utility, the power producers, the companies, Gencos, they actually finance the household. When I say finance, they subsidize the household to fix the leaking windows, to fix the air conditioning systems. What we call is a demand side management. In fact, the power sector companies finance the household, and at times they give free of cost subsidy to reduce the energy footprint, because there's no incentive for the household to lower the consumption, because they think that it's okay, it's affordable. Likewise, in this case, for the septic tanks also, it has a public health benefits. We may have to evolve a scheme where the municipality subsidizes the retrofitting cost. Maybe the national government or a state government have to consider about it, but individual household may not find the incentive to do it themselves. So I think it is a larger issue you have raised, but it's a very, very relevant question. So
and
thank you,
Asim. This is also where the standards, they may come into play.
Absolutely. We need standards, we need monitoring systems. So it's not easy, but I think it's worth looking at it, and that's the way forward. Thank you very much, Asim, for taking out your time and then taking us through step-by-step process.
Thank
you. So over to you, Pratibha, for now you heard both Orissa experience and scheduled desludging. Now, what is Hyderabad doing? And also, what are your experiences in Telangana? You are also looking at a worker safety and well-being program. Would you like to throw some light and then summarize some of the key messages also?
Thank you, Professor Chari, and thanks to Mr. Kalyanrad as well as Asim for sharing both Garima and the scheduled desludging. Hyderabad has seen immense casualties because of the irregular desludging, so we'll come to it very soon. So let me just share my screen and then we'll have a discussion. So before starting with Hyderabad case, I just wanted to throw some light into the sanitation workers, some of the challenges and the sanitation workers profile across South Asia. So last year, International Labour Organization has
Sorry to
conducted-
cut you, ma'am. Can you put it on the slideshow mode?
Yes.
Thank you.
So last year, International Labour Organization has conducted a workshop on sanitation workers' safety and dignity. And these are some of the challenges that they have identified. So physical injury, illness, workplace mortality, you have very well seen all of these issues that have been addressed to a certain extent by Garima. Informality, lack of recognition, social security, personal protective equipment, alternative livelihoods, all of these things are a problem, not just only in India, but across South Asia region. So, and if you look at the sanitation workers profile across the South Asia region, one thing that you can understand is that the percentage of sanitation workers employed across the public and private sector, there is an importance for why we should be looking at the public sector as well as the private sector. So the percentage of sanitation, this is the overall sanitation workers, including the garbage management workers as well as the FSSM service providers. So in India, 54% is coming in the private sector. Pakistan and Bangladesh is mostly in the public sector, but Nepal and Sri Lanka, we don't have information, but Afghanistan, it is 82% in the private sector. And if you look at the age group, 50 to 45 years is the average age of sanitation workers in the South Asia, exception in Sri Lanka. Majority of the workers belong to 46 to 59 years. And people above 60 years also work in this sector. But if you look in the context of India, sanitation workers who are engaged in the private FSSM service is almost around 70%. I'll come to why this private sector involvement is very important to be looked into. So in the context of India, there have been a lot of interventions by government of India as well in order to address the sanitation workers' safety and well-being. And in that, Prohibition of Employment of Manual Scavengers and their Rehabilitation Act 2003, which is the PEMSTRA Act, which Mr. Rath has mentioned, is one of the major intervention that the country has been actually working on for the protection of sanitation workers. So in this act is mainly to eliminate the manual scavenging and also to rehabilitation of these manual scavengers, protection of the weaker section of the population from any social injustices that are there, and assured dignity of life as well. So there is one major component in that act which gives the biggest hurdle for the third aspect, third aim, which is to assure dignity of life as well as to protect the life. So that is the hazardous cleaning. So any act, the manual cleaning of septic tank and the sewer are considered as a hazardous cleaning. So therefore, this act actually prohibits any person or local authority or anybody from engaging sanitation workers in hazardous cleaning of sewer or a septic tank. But most of the time, there is a storyline always that there is an absolute necessity. That is why the people are entering like that. So even after a decade of interventions of this PEMSRA Act, we can see accidents and mortality due to hazardous cleaning. And if you look at the data, so this is not an all-encompassing data, but this is just a data for the last 5 years, which we have actually taken from the newspapers and also from Safai Karamchari Andolan information. 51% of this, there are total number of 2,206 deaths, out of which 51% death is coming from the services provided in the septic tanks. So in India, as I said, septic tanks are mostly serviced by the private sector. Now coming to the 35%, which includes the sewer lines. Most of the sewer lines are under the control of urban local bodies, But you would have actually noticed that most of these urban local bodies actually outsource their service to private contracting agencies. So in some sense, this most of the deaths that are happening is private sector have a huge role to play in that. Okay. So what I have to say is that there is there is a documentary series which is called as Seconds from Disaster, which the original quote from that is, disasters do not just happen. They are a chain of critical events locked together in a time. So if you look at any sanitation workers' death in India, what we can see is that there are a chain of critical events where there is like a sheer the disaster occurs because of the sheer negligence of all the stakeholders that are involved in that sanitation worker safety, as well as the sanitation workers' life is being taken for granted by the state as well as the society in large. So what we need to do is we need to put a complete stop to the sanitation workers' death that is happening in the country. And Hyderabad got its realization in 2021 because we saw 4 deaths that happened in 2021 consecutively in Hyderabad. On 6th August 2021, 2 sanitation workers lost their lives cleaning the sewer lines of Hyderabad. You should remember that the sewer lines in Hyderabad is actually serviced by a machine. That is, Hyderabad is mechanized. Still, we found 2 deaths in 6th August 2021. And one of the inquiry report showed that the adequate machines were not there. But I think things must be, things are also beyond that. On 28th November 2021, 2 septic tank cleaners also died because of suffocation from inhaling toxic gases. So here is what the importance of scheduled discharging comes in, because most of the time what happens, even if there are machines, in the septic tank context, what people say is that, you know, manual entry is becoming important because of the irregular discharging, the sludge becomes solidified and machines cannot work on it. So in this context of the 4 deaths that had happened in Hyderabad, government of Telangana actually constituted a committee under the chairmanship of Professor Chari in order to look into the policies and programs for the welfare and safety of the sanitation workers in Hyderabad. And the policy, so the committee have met for quite few meetings were there, and the policy document that have emerged out of that is named as Gauravam, which is also called as Dignity. And this is a program for high risk sanitation workers. So here we are only dealing with the workers who are engaged in either desludging operations or who are cleaning the maintenance halls, working in the sewer lines, or and who are working in the FSTPs and STPs, and those kinds of workers only we are dealing with. So what Gauravam aims is that to implement the provisions of the PIMSRA Act in its letter and spirit, and also Telangana has FSSM policy which actually speaks about the mechanization of sanitation services. So to strengthen both these policies, then to ensure zero fatality and accident-free environment for the sanitation workers, to benefit the high-risk sanitation workforce and enhance their safety, well-being, and provide livelihoods by providing operational guidelines to each stakeholder, not just to the sanitation workers or the ULDs, but every single stakeholder who are involved in the sanitation workers' safety and well-being. Their responsibilities have been like very clearly outlined. And to ensure accountability of the private sector sanitation service providers, as we said, most of the deaths are happening in the private sector. So it is mandatory that the private sector, come into the accountability of private sector is brought into place, and also to place responsibility on the service seekers. So as a citizen, the responsibility that I do have. So we have a 6-step action plan for implementation of Gauravam, but this 6-step action plan is, some of the areas are separate for the operationalization of some of these activities are separate for the on-site sanitation system, as well as the sewer lines. So a responsible sanitation authority here would be, since we are looking only at the Hyderabad region, in Hyderabad, the responsible sanitation authority would be MD of the Hyderabad Metropolitan Water Supply and Sewerage Board. And then the operational unit of that is called a sanitation response unit. Sanitation response unit will be operationalized separately for the sewerage system as well as for the on-site system. For sewerage system, what happens is that if, there are two major areas of concern that Hyderabad, what HMWSSB has. One is that, the private commercial entities, which are large commercial entities, they use private services in order to clean the blockages in the sewer lines in front of them, because they do not want to reach out to the HMWSSB thinking that there will be some kind of fining or some other legal problems. So the problem that they create, they resolve it by using the private sanitation services. So that is a major problem. The second major problem in the sewer lines is Hyderabad sewer lines has shallow sewer line as well as the deep, like shallow maintenance holes as well as deep maintenance holes. So in deep maintenance holes, if any sanitation worker enter, it is a high risk problem that the sanitation worker will be having. So Gauravam will be actually operationalizing in a way that there will be no entry of sanitation worker into the deep main holes in any other context. In the absolute necessity of a requirement for entry of manual entry, then there will be a safety system that is triggered, where a safety protocol team as well as the section manager will be informed, and they will be supervising the entry of the manual the manual entry of the sanitation worker, and then it will be live recorded, so that there is no casualty that will be happening in the on-site systems. Similarly, the sanitation response unit will receive the request from the service seeker, and then they will be allocating the sanitation. They will be allocating the respective desludging operator to work in that area. In case of necessity, say for example, there is kind of a the sludge is solidified. In such cases or any other absolute necessity, then the safety protocol team and the section manager will again be present there in order to address the issue. So after that, we'll be doing identification of. Yes, sir. I'll just finish it off soon. So identification of high-risk sanitation workers. Then the next step is the empanelment of the desludging operators. So all the desludging operators, even in the informal sector, will be empaneled with the HMWSSB, and the private contracting agencies which are working which are working with HMWSSB will be in their contracts. It will be clearly worker safety will be a clear mention. Provision of PPE and safety devices is another step, and then the training and skill development of different stakeholders. So in addition to this 6-step action plan, we are also there is also a space for the workers' well-being. So in that working hours, intervals, then the health checkup, helpline, corpus fund, health insurance, all of these things will also be addressed in the Gauravam program. And as I said, the roles and responsibilities of the stakeholders are very, very clearly mentioned in the Gauravam document. So every service seeker, whether it is a household or bulk waste generators, and every service provider, that includes the private contracting agencies and desludging operators, the high-risk sanitation worker themselves, district magistrate, HMWSSB, Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, Pollution Control Board, SE Development Department, RTO, Traffic Police, all of these stakeholders' responsibilities and roles are very, very clearly mentioned, and also the training which is required to be given to all of these stakeholders are also very clearly mentioned in the Gauravam document. And as Mr. Rath mentioned earlier, the contravention and trials are also discussed in the document, but mostly this contravention and trial details are taken from the BEMSTRA Act itself. So we'll be going by that in the in case of any negligence that is happening. Lastly, in terms of apart from all of these things, if there is any accident that happens which leads to mortality of the sanitation workers, then the compensation will be provided to the workers' family as per the prevailing directions of the court. So currently there are at least two prevailing directions. One is from the Supreme Court and one is from the High Court of Odisha, which says that at least 10 lakh rupees needs to be provided to the sanitation workers and their family in case of mortality of the sanitation workers. So currently that is the prevailing setup, but even in the future, whenever there will be a change, that will be considered over here. In case of accident which is dealing to morbidity and disability, whenever there is morbidity and disability that happens because of the accidents, the sanitation workers are left alone. So here, for the medical support, the inpatient health insurance will cover the inpatient expenditure, but out-of-pocket expenditure has to be provided by the service provider, whether it is HMWSSB or it is private sector service provider. It is mandatory that they shall provide the complete expenditure for the treatment and recovery of the sanitation workers, and also service provider shall provide the support to the family if in case of morbidity and then the loss of wage, like that. So in essence, actually we took a lot of inspiration from Garima, and also we understand the significance of having scheduled desludging and to completely stop or eliminate the workers' deaths in Hyderabad. We have come up with this program, and yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Josna, if you could take out the slide. So friends, Banerjee sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah. So the couple of points what Dr. Pratibha mentioned, there are some terminologies that she has used. So I thought I'll just reinforce and then we will summarize it. There are a couple of questions. There's somebody called service provider, and then there is someone called service seeker. These are different stakeholders. The service provider in a typical urban context is the private desludging operator in the case of non-sewer sanitation. So there's a private desludger and they hire people, a driver, a caretaker, and then this service provider goes to a particular property for providing this service, desludging services. Who is the service seeker? The service seeker could be an apartment builder, maybe a household, individual household, or it could be a group of households, gated communities. So they are service seekers. If you look at any of those, acts and rules, the burden is predominantly on the government to deal with this problem. So what we felt that, I think it is important that we should look at both service provider as well as service seeker also as key stakeholders, because the service is generated because of the service seeker, that is a household. So in this new regulation that we are conceptualizing and is been taken up at the state level now, we are also placing the responsibility on the household to ensure that this act gets followed in letter and spirit. It means the household will be taken to the court, can be non-bailable warrants can be issued on the household if they don't comply and if they allow the service provider to get into the septic tank. So this is one critical difference. It means it's like an industry. If there is a gas leak from industry, the industry is responsible, not the government is responsible all the time. So here also, the private household, cluster of households or resident welfare association or individual household, they are seeking a service from a private operator. It is also the responsibility of the household to ensure that the service is offered in a safe environment. That's number one. Number two, whenever there is an entry into a confined space, that is inside a septic tank or inside a STP, a private desludge, a private STP or a public STP, or a machine hole or an inspection chamber, it has to be videographed. That's very important. So in the Hyderabad context, if there is a violation of it, Sudhaji asked, who shall be responsible? The responsibility is very much on the concerned zonal engineer. The concerned zonal engineer is very much responsible to make sure that casualties do not occur and nobody enters into the into a confined spaces. So that's a very critical difference. So the responsibility is not on everybody. It is pinpointed on the concerned engineer, and is also pinpointed on the household as a service seeker. These are the two fundamental conceptual differences that we are trying to bring to make the state a zero tolerance state towards accidents. There has to be a zero tolerance, like the way industry and hazardous industries have zero tolerance. Similar approach has to be brought into the municipal service delivery, and that's a context within which these acts are coming into play. So if a private desludger, I'm hiring a service, and if they come to my house and if they don't wear PPE, the burden is on the household who is seeking this service. So this is getting communicated to all the households that if you engage an operator without authorized license, or if an operator is coming to my house without PPE in place, I am responsible for it as a service seeker. So this answers some of the questions that Mr. Nagendra is asking. If there is untrained professional or is an unregulated professional being hired by private operators, that's where the deaths are happening. I think making the citizen also responsible as a key stakeholder is super important, and that's what we are trying to do through Gaurav. Mr. Nagendra, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Professor. I agree that the service seeker should also try to enforce and engage the person who are trained, who has the license. But many times it happens because the service seeker, like customer, they want some service. They cannot wait because they are already suffering from that. But at the same time, in the area, there is no much trained person or licensed person, so and to whom they can contact. So in that type of situation, sometimes even if I'm willing to take the services of a standard person, trained person, but there is no availability. So in that context, how this person can...
So Mr. Nagendra, in this case, we have set up a helpline and we have notified zone-wise who are the service providers. In fact, because of the competition in the market, there are multiple service providers. There's overload of service providers. The question is, the citizen should seek only empaneled service provider. That's a big problem. So that requires to be communicated to each and every household through a number of communication tools, including the water bill, behind the water bill, and behind the the bills that they get for water and sewerage. That if you engage anybody else, you are at risk legally. So that's one way of addressing the problem, what you're saying. So there's a helpline that has been established. This needs to be popularized much more than what it is right now, but this is work in progress. Any other points? So this is fabulous. So these are some of the, someone asked a very important question. I think I would like to mention. What is, Mr. Nagendra is asked, what is the reason for these accidents, major causes of casualty of sanitation workers going into this network? One is, of course, in the case of septic tanks, as Pratibha said, apart from lack of citizens' indifference, because they're saying you get into the septic tank, solve my problem immediately. So there's no restraint even on the part of the citizen. One of the other reasons is also that they don't desludge for 10-15 years. So the sludge gets hardened, thickened, and then there's no other choice but to go inside. So the solution to some of these things is also to promote this periodic desludging or scheduled desludging. Thereby, one can prevent people entering into the septic tanks. As far as sewer systems are concerned, there are multiple reasons: pad designs, chokages, solid waste entering into the sewer networks. There are multiple reasons, but as far as septic tanks are concerned, scheduled desludging or periodic desludging can prevent human entry into the septic tanks.
But Professor Chari, I was just thinking that in spite of all these things, because we are in a transition phase, maybe many tanks are still 10 years old, 20 years old. So such type of situation happens, and we know the science behind that. So when, if at all, the sanitation worker has to go down, then there must be some standard protocols. There must be some standard personal protective equipment that you should be carrying with that. So that should be also followed, and by that way we can really minimize this type of casualty.
Super question. There are some situations where human entry cannot be avoided, and that's where Dr. Pratibha mentioned there is a like an industrial confined space entry. There should be a protocol, and that's exactly what Gauravam is saying. But very importantly, she made one more point, that every confined space entry requires videograph, so that there is a very clear responsibility also being added in the Gauravam program. It is not just the protocol, emergency sanitation response unit and the protocol, but this has to be codified and documented so that everybody will be alert.
Mr. Navindra, I just have one more suggestion in addition to what Professor Chari mentioned. So we know that now currently there are so many, regular desludging has not been happening. So there are situations where the sludge has solidified. In such situations, there is one chemical solution which is called as Epsom salt. Maybe Dr. Rajeshi can explain more of it. Epsom salt can be one chemical solution that can be used in order to loosen the sludge so that machines can be used and the workers need not enter into that septic tank. So Dr. Banerjee, do you want to?
We have a paucity of time. I guess we'll take it up and surely discuss on the next day. Any more important questions for this session? I mean, this thing I will share a note with the participants about how it happens. Professor Chari, are we taking up any more questions, or can we conclude the session today? I guess we should conclude the session today. We have already run out of time, but there are three important mentions. One is to congratulate you for the first assignment, that 102 participants had actually attempted the assignment. And that's a commendable number. Let's give an applause to ourselves. And then the other part is most of you missed on the question on the BOD. BOD is actually a chemical parameter. It is an indirect way of understanding the chemical pollutant. It's not a biological parameter. That is where most of you made a mistake in selecting the answer, and then that is where none of us could score in the quiz, score 15 out of 15 questions. But that's it. Nothing to. And the third is there is a link already shared in the WhatsApp group for the sanitation tour that has been scheduled from 18th to 20th of October. Please do fill in, and it will be a first come first serve basis. And we would restrict ourselves to the first 25 participants who register for that. And that's all for today. And then there is a last thing I would like to mention. The next session, which was to be held on 12th October, has been shifted due to some of our emergency meetings which have come up to us. We will not be able to do it on 12th. We will be doing it on 14th of October. So the next session, which was to be held on 12th October, will be held on 14th October. That is Friday. That's all for today. Any other thing I'm missing out, Jyotsna? I guess no.
No, sir. I think we can end the session.
So we see you again on 14th. Whatever questions you have, you can keep communicating with us through the WhatsApp and